get you going on thinking about graduate school, or if you've thought about it a lot, you can ask some really specific questions to these folks who know a lot about it. So I'll introduce the speakers in order that we'll have them speak. And then we'll just let them, first of all, talk for, some of the folks might take around 10 minutes, other people, so 10 to 15, other people maybe more like 5. You can ask questions right when they're done, or you can wait till the end to ask questions too. But this is supposed to be interactive, so don't feel shy about asking them, because they're all here for that reason. Okay, so we have Dr. Daniel Drevon from CMU. He's in charge of the school psychology program there. He is joining us by teams. Dr. Denise Dedman from our own Masters of Social Work program here at SVSU. We have Jordan Truex, who is joining us by teams, who is a PhD candidate at Oakland and an SVSU alum. Then Keely Burns, who is also an SVSU alum and also a graduate student. I don't have her on my program, but she will fill you more in on what she does. We also have Dr. Travis Pashik, who many of you know, talking to us especially about clinical and counseling. Dr. Dutta, talking about human development and gerontology type programs. And then 2 of your peers who are right in the middle of this whole process, who's talking about their experiences, Travis Faustin and Erica McInerney. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming. We're going to start with Dr. Drevon from CMU. If you could tell us a little bit about graduate admissions and especially about school psych.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Danny Drevon. I'm an associate professor at Central Michigan. I'm the director of our 2 graduate programs we have in school psychology. So we have a specialist level program and a doctoral program. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what school psychology is, who school psychologists are, my view on graduate admissions generally, and then kind of specifically what our programs would be looking for and kind of the logistics around our admissions. This Teams window is kind of funny because I see myself in like 3 different windows, so it's total inception happening right now. Okay, so I'll start with like what is school psychology. I think about school psychology as a field that exists at the nexus of psychology and education, and so I usually characterize it as the application of the science of psychology to solving problems faced by children in education and related settings. So school psych is pretty dynamic. It involves working with kids and families. It involves helping teachers. It involves creating effective schools and building supportive and collaborative environments in communities. In terms of the job, I think some things to know about school psych is there's lots of jobs. There's a shortage for school psychologists nationally and here in the state of Michigan. Kind of what goes along with that is there's diverse roles and responsibilities. There's reasonable, maybe good salary and benefits. Things that kind of drew me to the field was the degree of job flexibility and some of the autonomy that you have as a practicing school psychologist. I expect over the next several years that job prospects will remain stable, if not very good. The federal government and state government are making pretty historic investments in school mental health services right now, including some investments that will allow us to grow the number of school mental health professionals in the field, and not just in school psychology, but also school social work and school counseling. School psychology is regularly listed among the top social services jobs. If you look at U.S. News and World Report, I think as recently as 2020, I think school psychology was the second-ranked social services job. In terms of who are school psychologists, so I would characterize us as mental health professionals who work in education or related settings. We do things like conduct assessments, deliver counseling or therapy services, and provide other intervention services as well, such as academic intervention or behavioral intervention services. The role is there's sort of a mix of direct and indirect services in school psychology. So if you want to work with kids all day, school psychology might not be the field for you, but if you like a mix of working with kids and doing some indirect services, so working with adults, we do collaborate regularly with teachers, administrators, and families as well. The big idea is helping kids, families, communities promote more successful outcomes for children in schools. In terms of examples of specific problems school psychologists might be called in to work on, things like reading difficulties, attention concerns, social concerns, depression, coping with crises and trauma, and bullying. In terms of demographics of the field, so school psychology tends to be largely female, largely white, and largely monolingual English speakers. Despite a school population that's increasingly diverse in terms of race, ethnicity, and language. And so we really need more school psychologists generally speaking, but we're especially looking to recruit males and gender diverse folks, folks from non-white backgrounds, and folks who are bilingual or multilingual to meet the needs of the increasing diversity we're seeing in U.S. public schools. So that's school psychology generally, and a little bit about who school psychologists are. We do have school psychology programs over at Central Michigan University, not too far away. The entry-level degree for school psychology is the specialist degree. So this is a more than a master's degree. So our specialist degree is 70 credits. It's a 3-year program that's full-time. And so it involves a year where you're just doing coursework, a year where you do coursework and clinical work 2 days a week in schools, and a 3rd year where you're full-time in the schools. Our specialist program is approved by the National Association of School Psychologists and ultimately allows you to be credentialed as a school psychologist in the state of Michigan and many other states as well. We also have the doctoral program. So our doctoral program is 102 credits, and that's a 5-year program full-time. Our doctoral program is accredited by the American Psychological Association and approved by the National Association of School Psychologists. So the PhD or the doctoral program is a more of a research-oriented degree and program, but it does allow folks it does open up the number of settings you can work in post-graduation. So our PhD graduates, often they work in schools, but some of them are working in clinical or hospital settings, and some of them go into faculty positions too. So right now we have 4 faculty. So myself, Mike Hickson, Sandy Knaus, and Katrina Reimer are the core school psychology faculty, but we work closely with our APA accredited clinical psychology program and our other graduate programs in industrial organizational psychology and experimental psychology too. Okay, in terms of graduate admissions, my general philosophy, and I think our program's philosophy on admissions I would describe our philosophy as being sort of holistic, multifaceted, in the sense that we're looking at a number of different indicators, and comprehensive. We're trying to get a lot of, as much useful information as we can in the application process. So we'll look at some kind of quantitative indicators. So of course GPA is important. Historically, we've used the GRE, the Graduate Record Examination. We're not requiring that any longer, so we made it optional, which seems to be a trend, nationally speaking. So probably other folks will talk about that some. But then looking at faculty judgments of experience relevant to the field. So in school psych, you do things like work at summer camps, do substitute teaching, do any youth mentoring kind of stuff. Job shadowing school psychologists, all of that's really good. We love that stuff. So those relevant experiences with kids, and particularly kids with disabilities, are things that we like to see on folks' resumes or CVs. We look at oral and written communication skills. So you'll write a personal statement where you talk about the reasons for applying to the program and what your professional goals are, so we can kind of get a sense of what your written communication skills are. We ask for letters of recommendation, so there we can get a sense, again, about written and oral communication skills. One big thing that I personally look for in in applications is like you understand kind of what you're getting yourself into in terms of the field that you're applying to. So school psychology is maybe unique in the sense it's closely related to some other fields like school counseling or school social work. So I want to make sure that you know, want to do school psychology and not one of those other fields. So making sure we check on that. And then research experiences. So we do look at research experiences in undergraduate programs. It's especially important for folks applying to our doctoral program. Not as important for our specialist program, but we certainly would take a look at that as well. In terms of admissions requirements for CMU school psychology program, we look at a minimum GPA above 3.0. We usually have psych majors, but you don't have to be a psych major. You can come from a related field like teacher prep, social work, sociology, child development. We just ask that folks have at least 15 credits of psychology or what we deem as equivalent to that. And we're particularly looking at like research methods and statistics when we look at those other types of courses. Our application deadline this year is January 15th. And I'm going to drop some links in the chat, hopefully that those can get circulated to folks about our program, about school psych generally, and some databases you can use to find other programs in school psychology as well. So I probably talked long enough, so I'll stop now.
Well, thank you so much. Do you have any questions about CMU school psychology? Sorry, I'm echoing. Any particular questions for him? Okay, so we will, first of all, I think you can stay around for a little while. So if you think of questions at the end, especially about, he's been on the other side of the graduate school admission process. So especially about what they're looking for, anything more specific, we can do that. But maybe we could pass the baton to Dr. Dedman to talk about social work a bit.
Okay. I'm Denise Dedman, and I teach in the Social Work and Youth Services Department. We created an MSW in 2016. We've had a social work program for 50 years. It's been accredited at the bachelor level for 40 years. So we're a pretty old social work department in the state. For a number of years, we kicked around the idea of starting a master's degree program, but Michigan State had an extension program nearby, and we thought, well, no. And then we decided we would do it. So we did it, and we are fully accredited by the Council on Social Work Education. And this is really important to you if you pursue a degree in social work. As I said, our undergraduate BSW program has been accredited for 40 years. The MSW program has been accredited since 2018 and retroactively to 2016. So all our graduates have an accredited master's. The importance of that accreditation is that you can't become licensed in Michigan or any other state if you have an unaccredited master's. So the MSW enables you to be licensed in Michigan for third-party billing if you're in a clinic, if you're doing clinical work, and for independent practice. The MSW is licensed at that level in almost every state. So the MSW is the terminal degree, the final degree of our profession. And it allows you to do a huge variety of things. Literally, social workers work with people from conception to death and after. Well, not seances, but we work with grieving members of their family and community afterwards. Typically, people don't know a lot about social work. I had not really heard of social work as a profession until I was a junior in college. And I ran into one. And I thought, wow, that really looks like it combines these other things I was taking, and I switched majors. Always a good thing to do late in your college career. After earning my master's in social work, I practiced in community mental health centers for 6 years. Everything from outpatient services for chronically mentally ill clients who had been in the Georgia State Hospital for 10 to 40 years and were released to community homes. So that was a job where I got a lot of experience. I've worked with adult community members with depression, marital difficulties, anxiety disorders, kids with behavior problems. And I've run kid groups and all manner of things with those kids with behavior problems. And I've done, across those 6 years, emergency services to emergency rooms, jails, etc. Nights and weekends, because I was with county mental health centers, and that's what we did back then. So I got a breadth of experience in doing clinical work, and then I moved to Michigan and became a school social worker, worked upstate in West Michigan for 18 years as a social worker in the schools, where I knew a lot of psychologists, and the school psychologists and I were usually paired up on diagnostic teams, so we would travel around. I live in a little rural county, and so most of my experience has been in rural areas. So rural mental health settings. From my internship on, I interned in the county where Deliverance was filmed, if you've ever seen that classic movie. I worked in the schools in the little rural county, so I drove as many as 20 miles between school buildings and served 4 public and 1 religious school district. So as a part-time activity while I was there, I worked some evenings and weekends for a home health care agency, and I did supervision for bachelor's level social workers in the nursing home and the hospital for part-time work. So I'm telling you that to give you an idea of the breadth of things I've done with 1 master's degree. So really, truly, across the age span, through every venue of practice, social workers are involved. Most people have heard of social workers only through TV shows where we remove children and deliver turkeys. And so we kind of have a reputation to overcome there. The SVSU Masters in Social Work is an advanced generalist master's. What the heck is that? The bachelor's degree is a generalist degree. You don't specialize at all in the bachelor's level social work program. At the master's level, every program has to offer some specialization, one of which can be a generalist specialization. So that's what we offer. The reason we do that is in our needs assessment in the Great Lakes Bay region, lots of folks, especially in clinics, said, well, yeah, we need folks to come in and do clinical work for a couple of years till they're fully licensed, but we really need folks who can move up to become a program manager or start doing utilization review or other research within the center. And so we need people with beyond clinical skills. So that's what we do. Our students have mostly taken the clinical licensing exam. We've had a pretty good pass rate at first time passing. So it's been ranging up above 85%, which is right in the national norm. I think we've only had 1 student who actually took the Master's Generalist exam. So almost everybody who comes into our program comes in wanting to be a therapist. And then we talk about Jane Addams, we talk about not just healthcare disparities, mental health disparities, but social barriers that cause those disparities. And we try to grow up activists and community organization leaders as well as practicing clinical social workers. In the years before COVID, we started each new cohort with a 3-day experiential immersion experience to Chicago, where we went to Hull House, where Jane Addams founded a settlement house in Chicago. And we looked at the work and life of Mother Cabrini, who also founded a hospital, orphanage, and school there, and really studied their lives and how they moved from that trying to do good works to running organizations, fundraising, managing boards, dealing with community relations. And so that's the generalist in a nutshell. As I said, people had left our program, people had graduated our program, and passed the clinical exam easily enough. So it's not that a generalist program doesn't give you clinical background. We also teach you to write grants. In the second year of the program, you're involved in a 2-semester program evaluation at a local agency. We have agencies who pitch needs to us that, they have this program and it's a startup and it's too small for them to spend time evaluating because they are required to evaluate these other programs, and we come in, we evaluate that. We teach grant writing. One of our students in the first year landed a $125,000 grant. So not for herself, for one of the agencies that they were writing grants for. So we try to really make the generalist part hands-on so that you haven't read a book about grant writing and written an outline, you've actually lived through writing a grant for an agency. In our program, we take all kinds of minors. In our first cohort, we had an anthropologist, 2 social workers with older degrees. You have to be within 5 years to go into the advanced standing with a bachelor's in social work. So if your degree was 17 years old, you go into the 2-year program. We've had people with degrees in performance cello. So a wide variety of bachelor's degrees. And that's really nice because people in our program are started as a cohort. They go through the program class by class together as a cohort. They form study groups in that first 3-day immersion experience. And having the diversity of so many different undergraduate disciplines has just been great. So we're opening admissions next week. We close admissions in December. In the 2-year program, you do a 2-day-a-week internship called a field placement each of the 2 years. The first year is a more generalist experience, doing case management, doing other not therapy assignments in agencies. The second year, if you want to do clinical work, that's when you're in clinical work. Literally, the first year, people with a degree in anthropology start in an agency the first week of class. We don't actually want them doing therapy. So it's an extensive internship, 900 hours over 2 years. And so our 2-year regular standing MSW program is 59 credit hours. And we'd love to have SVSU graduates come over and apply with us. Any questions? Yeah.
You had mentioned that the MSW program that you offer is accredited. What is the difference between the unaccredited programs? Are there any?
Yes, there have been. There have been a number of programs that call themselves social work programs that are actually housed in sociology, and you can't get licensed in any state. So that's the difference.
So how come those programs are available? Like, why do people choose those programs? Do they not read the fine print?
They don't.
Okay.
And often people moving from an undergraduate experience are kind of used to trusting a university. And the university says, hey, we do this and you can go out and do that. And not necessarily so. Michigan was the next to last state to be licensed. So we have only been licensed in the state of Michigan since 2005. So we had a lot of programs offering degrees that were not licensable back when we didn't have a license. Yes.
How do you check for accreditation, not just like in social work programs, but like all graduate
Okay,
programs?
good question. You're a choosy consumer. So on the program's website, they should say accredited by the American Psychological Association, National Association of School Psychologists, Council on Social Work Education. So that should be prominently displayed on their website. If it's not, and you're wondering, then you look up who's the accreditor for this profession, and CSWE, our accreditor, has all the schools that are accredited listed. All the ones that are maybe going to lose their accreditation, also listed. Keep being choosy.
Very good question. Anything else?
I have flyers up here about our program, if anybody's interested on your way out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think next we're going to go to Jordan Truax, who should be on Teams, one of our alums.
Oh, hang on a second. Sorry about that. I was trying to
You
cut
might be
down on some
muted.
background noise here. Give me another shot.
Is Jordan there?
Can you hear me?
Oh, good. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yes,
Yes.
you can hear me?
Mhm.
Okay, just making sure. I did prepare like a minor PowerPoint just to like go behind what I'm talking about. Since I guess I'm more about how graduate experience is like. So let me try to present that and see. Share.
Yes, you should be able to share.
Okay. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess just a little bit about me first. I'm Jordan Truax. I'm currently a graduate student here at Oakland University. I'm in my office, my lab right now. It's not the greatest, as you can see. But I'm part of the Laboratory of Cognitive Origins. My advisor is Dr. Jennifer Wonk. And I focus a lot on comparative psychology. So psychology with animals, as you can see, these are some of the species that I've worked with. I've worked with the 3 male gorillas at the Detroit Zoo. You can see them on the bottom. Their names are Chip, Congo, and Pende as you go across from left to right. I've also worked with African crested porcupines before. That was my master's thesis that I recently got published, thankfully. And then right now for my dissertation, I'm working with birds in an aviary in Louisiana. So I went and did research with them over the summer. You can see this bird right here was really interested in my GoPro, so he was pecking at it a little bit, unfortunately. But yeah, that's just kind of the gist about me. I'm a PhD candidate, so I've already passed my comps. I've been here for a while. I have my master's already. I should be graduating about a year and a half, actually. But just to give you an idea of what some of my research is, at first I focused more on cooperation and social cognition, so how animals think about their conspecifics, so individuals who are the same species, and things like that. So this was my master's thesis where we did a loose string task with these 2 African crested porcupines. Basically, they both have this rope that's attached to this baited platform. It has food on it. So they both have to pull it backwards in order to get access to the food. So they have to cooperate together. Just to give you a little video of that here. So you can see them pulling it forward and eating the food. So that was a good run. They were really motivated participants for my research, but that kind of gives you an idea of some of my research. Here are some of the research that I have published so far. I've done research with orangutans where we did an altruistic task to assess how altruistic they were. Here's my paper that I published with Dr. Dutta. Originally, I thought I would want to do IO psych, so we focused on procrastination and everything. That's something I highly recommend getting involved in before you go to grad school is research. That experience with Dr. Dutta has helped me so much in my graduate research career. So it's something I highly, highly recommend to get experience with that before you're going, because it looks really good on applications as well as giving you experience when you're in grad school. But yeah, so here's the porcupine study as well, and then I also did some research with the gorillas as I talked about. But mainly about grad school in general, so how you can prepare for grad school is sort of what I was going to talk about. So I guess for what to expect, grad school is a lot, I don't know about harder, but it's a very difficult situation. It's very different from undergrad. Getting ready for it, I think I did a lot of things right, if I can say that about myself. Thankfully, I got involved in research with Dr. Dutta, and that helped me immensely. Especially, I don't know if you remember this, Dr. Dutta, you helped me with like syntax on SPSS. And just knowing a bit about the syntax was so helpful. I'm sorry if this doesn't make sense to a lot of people. Basically, the syntax is like the coding behind SPSS a little bit. And coding nowadays is getting really necessary for doing research. So if you were going to be more research focused in graduate school, learning a bit about coding, learning a bit about SPSS, particularly R is the program for data analysis that's becoming really popular now. So getting more familiar with computers is actually something kind of surprising that I think I didn't prep myself so much for in undergrad that I think I would have done now if I was going to go back and change it. Things for helpful opportunities. Again, research, but also possibly if you have to have a job in undergrad to sort of get by, which I know a bunch of people do, trying to have a job that's related to what you want to do in the future. So for me, it would have been possibly working at a zoo or at least volunteering at any place with animals. Honestly, it would have been good for if I wanted to go into, or if you wanted to go into comparative psychology. But other things, if you're interested on working with other populations, like some of the people here are trying to work with kids with autism, so they have worked in ABA and different things like that. So working in an area that's related to what you want to do in the future, extremely helpful in undergrad. Other skills to build, I would say, again, I'm more research focused, so I would say more research skills, how to write well, how to analyze data. I know statistics is never the favorite course for most people, but it's so immensely helpful when you're doing your own research to know how to run your stats, to know what statistical tests you need to run for what you're doing. So definitely pay attention in your stats courses, as much as they may not be the most interesting. They're super, super helpful for the future. And what life is like for grad school. So grad school definitely can take over your entire life if you let it. It is kind of an all-consuming thing where the more time you put into it, the more you get out of it, and the more that's going to help you in your future. But that can always go too much, where you're not really focusing on your own personal life, and it drains you kind of quickly if you do that. So knowing how to pull a good balance between how much time you're focusing on your research and your classes, and also your own personal life is super important, because it can be very, very overwhelming with how much time you have to put towards things. Specifically, research can be kind of hard to shift for a lot of people, because I feel like in undergraduate, your main focus is getting good grades. That's not really the main focus in grad school. Of course, you need to get good grades on your courses, but a lot of things are sort of self-directed when it comes to your research. So you have to be on top of yourself for doing it and put your own deadlines on yourself. That can be kind of a hard shift into graduate school. Finances as well can be really tricky. My stipend at Oakland, so I get paid to teach courses here. I teach one course a semester, and that gives me, well, it completely pays my tuition, and then I get a $15,000 a year stipend. However, in Oakland, the surrounding area is really expensive, so that's not a lot to live off of, and it's really hard to have a job while doing grad school. So really, that can be kind of difficult, and something you kind of want to plan for when you go to grad school is how the finances are going to work there. I've really had to live with other people and things like that to kind of help with my finances and things. So it's something to keep in mind. Look at grad programs and look at the stipend for it if you're going to be paid. If you're going towards PhDs, they will typically be more paid. Masters, maybe less so. It also depends on the field. At least for me, PhDs tend to be paid. They should be anyway. Masters, you might have to pay more out of pocket and may not have a chance to like teach for funding. Some fields will also pay you for doing research rather than teaching. So I get my money from teaching, but other people may be funded for their own research, and that's really helpful, particularly if you want to go into research as a career, which I do. So that would be nice. I wish I could have that, but I don't. So that way you'd be able to spend more time on research and do more of that. That's something that brings me to another point of really think before you apply to grad school, you really want to think about what you want to be doing in your future, where you want to be and how grad school will get you there. I feel like a lot of times in undergrad, we kind of just want to get in somewhere. With grad school, it's more about which place you get in. And it's not just the school that's important with grad school, it's your advisor. How well you get along with your advisor can vastly affect your graduate school career. So make sure you like your advisor. Something I did before I applied was emailing the advisors that I wanted to work with. I ended up looking them up by looking up research articles I was really interested in and looking where those faculty worked, and then sending them emails and asking them, about the research I had read, if they were accepting students the next semester, which is really important. Sometimes they're not. How much the funding would be there, what sort of research they're looking to do in the future, what grad school life is like at that particular university. You really want to have good mentor fit. It's something that's so important that you don't think about in undergrad, because it's not as super important. But in graduate school, it is one of the most important things to make sure you're getting in a place that you want to go and that you think you will do well at, and that will get you to where you want to go. Is sort of the main point, I think, with there. Time and leisure, again, graduate school can take up almost all of your time. So I take 2 courses, and then I also have to do research on the side, and then I teach 1 course. It takes up a lot of my time teaching, if no one's done it before. Obviously the professors have done it before, but teaching takes up so much more of your time than you would ever expect it to do so, because it's like giving a 2-hour presentation twice a week, at least for my class, because it's a 4 credit hour class. So imagine how much time that takes to prep your lecture, prep your activities for that. So that can really take up a lot of your time if you're if you have a teaching stipend for grad school. If you don't teach, then of course that wouldn't apply so much. But yeah, I think really getting involved in undergrad can help you so much. Faculty can help guide you for where you want to go and how you can get there, and really direct you towards skills to build. So definitely become involved, and those relationships are really important to getting into grad school. I think someone already mentioned GRE is kind of going down and being used. I had to take it when I applied, but nowadays it's becoming less and less used. So it's going to focus on other things in your grad application. So your reference letters are super important. You want to at least have 3 people that know who you are and know what you're like, because otherwise, when you're applying for grad schools, they have really no idea what you're like. So you need to make those really positive connections to come across as a good applicant. Your grade point average is super important in undergrad for getting into grad schools. What else is important at this point? Your own personal experiences and things that can relate to what you're trying to do. Like I said, for different jobs, you can use as a way to say that you have experience for certain things. Really look where you want to apply and try to tailor your application to each place so that you're not just applying as a general. What else should I mention? How to get ready. Again, stats for me is super important and something I wish I paid a little bit more attention to. Not that I didn't pay attention to stats class. Dr. Cohen and Dr. Kazar were great for stats. I just wish I think I had more like regular math classes to get me prepared for that. Really pay attention in your methods course too. It can really help if you're ever focusing on research. Of course, some people may go into fields where research isn't as important. And again, it really depends what you're trying to do in the future. So I personally want to do research at a zoo, so research is super, super important for me. But yeah, really gearing what you're doing now towards what you want to do in the future is super, super important. I don't know if there's anything else anyone wants me to touch on.
Yeah.
I'll this if I can figure out.
Actually, if we could hand it over to Keely real quick, and then maybe if people have the questions right after Keely talks about like grad school life in general for these two, that would be great. So if we could hand it over to Keely. Thank you so much, Jordan. That's wonderful insights.
Hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, no, my computer was being slow, so I didn't know if it was doing it. Yeah, I was just about to say if I could like just tap in because I have to leave at 3:30. But yeah, I am an SPSU alum. I graduated SPSU Psych in 2019, December. I graduated with criminal justice and psychology majors at SPSU. Then I got into my master's at Roger Williams University in Bristol, Rhode Island, and my master's was forensic and legal psychology. That was a 2-year program with 45 credits. Unfortunately, that program is no longer in existence, so I feel weird talking about it because I can't like refer you to go there, but there is a sister program that's forensic mental health counseling that's still at Roger Williams that's very popular, so it kind of fits the forensic mold better anyways. That's still going on. They're still accepting students. I'm currently at a PhD first year here at UMass Lowell, and that's where I'm currently zooming from. The program I'm in is the Applied Psychology and Prevention Science, and so it's kind of a broad applied psychology department, and specifically I'm in applied cognition. My research interests are in wrongful convictions and eyewitness testimony, legal safeguards, and my current advisor works a lot on plea decision making. So yeah, I think the biggest advice I can give is take all the things that you can while at SPSU. I can't say how much SPSU helped prepare me for graduate school. I don't think I would have been able to do any of this without this department, for sure. Getting involved in research is really important. I was a part of Dr. Weaver's lab, and that was really fun. Taking the lab courses seriously is really important. I think that having the 2 required labs, hopefully that's still accurate, but those are really helpful. So try to take them as seriously as you can and try to be as involved in your lab as you can. As well as stats, I think that taking Dr. Hatcher's advanced stats really helped me. I carry that book with me everywhere still to this day, and I actually shoved it in my master's quant professor's face, and I was like, "Your book sucks. This book's better." And yeah, well, I just didn't like the version of Andy Field he was using. It was just not good. And then I showed him Dr. Hatcher's book, and then he ended up like being like, oh yeah, maybe I should make this the book. And I was like, yeah, hello. Yeah, I mean, anyone have questions? I'm pretty, I don't know, general. If anyone has interest in psych and forensic and legal stuff.
I guess maybe if I can jump in, Keely, for a question. Can you distinguish folks what forensic psychology means to you now that you're a graduate student?
Yes. Yeah. When I was in undergrad, I really thought it was criminal minds. That is not the case whatsoever. So I do think it's super important if like you're trying to live that fantasy to like have this realization that it's not it. Forensic psychology is really clinical psychology just with the forensic population, to be honest. A lot of things that my master's highlighted, even though I'm not forensic actually, I'm legal psych, but I did have forensic background just because my master's. It's gonna be more like competency testing, legal standards, like is somebody criminally insane? It's a lot of forensic evaluations. So it's really clinical hiding in just a forensic population.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Any questions for either Jordan or Keely about just what life is like when you're a grad student?
Or how to prepare for it.
Oh, yes. Or somebody had online had a question about finances. I think Jordan addressed it. I don't know if anybody had further questions about that too.
I also have
Okay, good. A lot of research-based programs will have that.
I might just want to make a quick comment from having seen Jordan make some switches when she moved on to comparative. She had been working with me for a good 2 years and she was a very motivated student. I still remember connecting with you, Jordan, over Christmas because that was when our editor wanted the final draft in. And I'm thinking, Christmas, give me 2 days. I can't even turn to my student here. And so we were both working pretty steadily, but even before that, she had a lot of soul searching. And I think she took Dr. Momberg's course on comparative and loved working with animals. And at one point, she went like, Dr. Detta, I really like people. I think I'm starting to like animals better. You remember that, Jordan? And then she was just like, and I don't know how you do this teaching because I would be like sitting on my hands with some of the people that you have to deal with. I remember those two statements so well that you made. And I encouraged her. And the thing about research that she's mentioning, no matter who you work with, a bunch of us do different kinds of research, the skill sets are the same. Learning to think critically, learning quantifying your information, learning how to measure, learning how to write, learning how to get grants, learning how to present. All of us do the same sorts of things, just the areas depend. So wherever you want to go, and you can move. Look at what she's doing now. I know nothing about how to work with animals, but there she is. And maybe if I were to move in that area, I'd be coming to you, Jordan.
Yeah, it was super helpful the way you thought about SPSS and how you used it, because now I'm trying to transition to R, which is a free software for stats, which is super popular nowadays. And knowing a bit about the syntax on SPSS had helped me transition to R, and it was so helpful. So I'm glad that you did that. But that was entirely just because I did research with her on the side. Like, it wasn't a class that I had taken to learn through for that. So research on the side can be so helpful to really prepping yourself for grad school. Other note I wanted to make is like being okay with having people rip your paper to shreds with what you write, because I feel like a lot of us are so used to like getting only minor marks or something from class, or at least maybe I was, I don't know. And getting really extensive comments from your advisor and having them put like red marks everywhere. Dr. Dutta would do this to me. And I was there like, oh my God, am I such a terrible writer? Am I stupid? But it wasn't ever that. It's just that your writing can always be improved. So changing that mindset can be really helpful.
And you had that in grad school too, even after me, right?
Well, I think I'd like to go out of order just a little bit here and make sure that we can get some good input from now people on the other end of this process who are applying right now. So we have Erica and Travis here. I don't know who wants to go first.
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay, tell me just a little bit about what they're doing in the process of applying. They haven't gotten in yet because the deadlines haven't gotten here yet. But go ahead.
Bye, Keely.
Bye, Keely.
So good to see you, Keely.
Good to see you too.
Hit me up. I have you guys have my email if anyone wants me to talk in other classes.
All right.
Okay,
thanks,
I have
Keely.
her email. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm Travis Austin. Some of you may know me from being in classes. I'm vice president of Prime, so if you're in Prime, I'm sure you see me around. Yeah, I'm currently in the process of applying to grad school again. This is my third go around. Don't let that like make you cry, okay? Because my initial experience is in history, so I have a master's degree in history, and you know, I switched career fields after my master's degree, so it probably would be beneficial to switch it in my junior year. But I went full on for history because I want to be a history professor. That didn't work out because I'm here now. But I came here after getting a master's in history because the job prospects for psychology are a lot better than history. And because I kind of had like an aha moment as I was graduating with my master's with history, where one, I was like, I'm not going to get a job doing this. Thankfully, I do have a job now. I'm an adjunct professor of history at Delta College, but that's not full time. So I decided to come back for psychology. I took a minor in psychology. And I was out here studying history, so I kind of had that, build up of credits in psychology where I could only spend 2 years here, finish up my bachelor's in psychology. So yeah, when I was done here at SVSU with history, I applied to graduate programs, got into CMU in their history program, and when I was done at CMU, I applied to PhDs in history, and I also applied back here to SVSU. Didn't get into PhDs in history, obviously, and now I'm back to SVSU, and now I'm applying to PhDs in psychology. So hopefully it goes better than history. I think it will, because my experiences here in psychology prepared me a lot better for PhD programs than the history department did. Not to bash the history department, they're wonderful people. Jarvis, Jolly, T, all of them are great professors if you have to take them. But yeah, so I'm right in the middle of applying to PhD programs. Just got done meeting with Dr. Patrick about it. A couple other of us did as well. It's I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It's a stressful process, right? It's a difficult process, but it's a process that will be worth it in the end. So much like some of the other speakers have said, you really want to do your research on the programs that you want to get into. You can never start this research too early. Even if you're a freshman, you can start it like right now, today. If you know what you're interested in, you know what your research interests are, or what your career aspirations are, start looking at those programs as early as possible. I know there's going to be some resources that are going to be talked about later on today that kind of like show you how to find those programs you want to get into. And I really used the APA database a lot because, as it's also been said, if your program is not accredited by the proper accrediting agency, it can actually just like eliminate your chance of getting the job that you want. So making sure the programs you apply to are APA accredited, that's something that I've really looked into. I'm applying to clinical psychology programs all over in the Midwest. Most clinical psychology programs do have specializations in working with children or adult populations. If you're interested in working in populations that have intellectual or developmental disabilities, Ohio State is basically the only program in the nation that has that specialization with IDD populations. That's my like top program. So basically, some of the things I've done to prepare myself here at SVSU is first of all, when I moved back home from CMU, I started looking for jobs in the field of psychology. The most prominent jobs right now that there's the most openings for at like bachelor's level or below are behavioral technicians. So that's applied behavior analysis, and most often it's working with children on the autism spectrum. I've been working at my job for over a year with Bay Human Services / Autism Plus. I love my job, okay? When I first got my job, I went into the interview and I was like, hey, you know, I have a master's in history. And the lady, Martina, my supervisor, she was like, okay, like, how is that gonna help you? And the benefit with me is that I've always been really interested in like helping people, and I've also been really interested in teaching. You know, I wanted to be a professor. So I was like, well, maybe some of my teaching skills I learned at CMU can help me with working with children. I was very hesitant to take the job. I took it because it was close to home and they offered good pay. And once I get in the job, I was like, I love this, you know. So don't be afraid to like step out of your comfort zone to try to get that experience, because now that I got that job, it's a wonderful experience to have, especially applying to clinical psychology programs. If you want that specialization in working with, you know, developmentally disabled populations, or in clinical psychology, because technically my job is considered a clinical setting because I work in a clinic. Another thing I've done is joined a bunch of faculty research labs. My first experience out here was in Dr. Weaver's lab. Admittedly, I didn't do much. Dr. Weaver probably doesn't remember what I did in there. The lab was completely online. I tried to attend. What?
It said rough times.
Right, yeah. It was the cognitive and affective lab, so CAL. I helped write the paradigms for one of the studies and stuff like that. I've also joined the social psychology lab with Dr. Ward, and now the clinical research team with Dr. Pashik. Like it's been said, join these research teams and labs as early as possible. They're going to give you very important experience that grad programs are looking for, especially if you're applying to any program that is a PhD. I'm sure Dr. Pashik's going to touch on it, but there are two differential programs. There's a PsyD and a PhD. I really learned about the difference between those two just as part of the application process. So the PhD is more research driven. So they're going to really, really look for that research experience. Do you know stats? Do you know how to write a manuscript? Do you have any presentations that you published? You know, what psychological papers have you written? Whereas the PsyD program is more practical based. Now there's benefits and not benefits to both those programs. Like it's also been said, PhD programs, I've found in my experience, like applying PhD programs are usually funded because you are doing research. So you can get research grants, research funding, teaching opportunities. When I was at CMU for history, I was a teaching assistant, so my entire college was paid for. And I've seen that's the case with PhDs as well. PsyD programs are kind of harder to get funding with. One tip I'll give you all is when you're looking at programs, you can often tell if a program is funded if you go to the program webpage and it says scholarship opportunities. That's a red flag. Okay, it's not funded. But if it says funding over on the side, that usually means it's funded. Okay. If it says scholarship opportunities, that means you have to apply for scholarships, and you're already going to be doing so much with your application process. You're not going to have time to apply to those scholarships as well. So you really want to make sure you know what the financial situation is going to be before you apply. One of the most important aspects I've found in applying is making sure you're a good fit for that program. You can say all you want, oh, I really want to get into this program, but they don't have any professors I want to work with, but I really want to get into it. if they don't have any professors that you want to work with, it's going to be very difficult for you to draft your statement of purpose. The statement of purpose is probably the most important part of your application. It's what's telling the grad programs, hey, this is what I'm interested in, this is what I want to do, and this is how your university can help me achieve that. So I just finished drafting my statement of purpose for Ohio State. I talked about my job as an ABA tech. I talked about my dedication to serving and doing research with populations with developmental and intellectual disorders. Really being able to tie your personal experiences to your research experiences is an important skill to have when writing your statement of purpose. And the faculty here at SVSU can assist you really well in that. Another thing is the first thing that I do when I look at a new PhD program is look at the faculty. If I don't see any faculty on that list in that program that their research interests me, I just don't apply to that program. It's kind of, I don't want to say it's a waste of your time to apply to a program where the research doesn't interest you, but if it's a PhD program, it kind of is. Because like I said, the PhD is very research oriented, and if there's not a professor there that researches in the topic that you want to do research in, I would try to find a different program that really does that research that you're interested in. And then there's two differential things. So there's the professors that do the research, and then most professors also run a research lab. And sometimes the research lab that the faculty run are a little bit different than their research interests. So most of the time on a faculty profile, you'll see like, you know, they're the headliner for this lab, you know, it'll be called Professor Whatever's lab, or it may have a different name like the Cal lab that Dr. Weaver runs. At the graduate level, a lot of the graduate programs, of course, have a lot more funding than we do here at SVSU. So you'll see there's a lot of different research projects within one lab that are analyzing a lot of different, you know, like innovative topics, right? So if you're not interested in like one professor's research interests, but you're kind of like, oh, you know, their lab is interesting, click on the lab link. And oftentimes the lab link will have, you know, anywhere from 2, 3, 4, 5 different projects that current graduate students at that university are working on. And it's very important to be able to identify yourself within that lab when you're writing your statement of purpose. So, you know, if you're writing a statement of purpose for a specific university, you want to be able to say, I'm interested in this professor's research. I'm interested in getting in actively participating in this lab. And you just want to be able to put yourself within that department and really like sell yourself as why you would be a good fit for that program. And that's kind of the most important thing that I found that most grad programs, or rather PhD programs, they really emphasize is that your statement of purpose needs to show you're a good fit for that program. So all of that in determining you're a good fit, all of that is determined upon the amount of research that you've done on that university. You know, look at the faculty profiles, look at their labs, look at the mission statement for the Department of Psychology at that university. Look at the different resources that Department of Psychology has. So, for instance, Ohio State, they actually have what's called the Niesander Center. And the IDB program at Ohio State that I'm applying to is a part of the Department of Psychology, but everything is done at the Niesander Center. And the Niesander Center is like a specific research center just for intellectual and developmental disabilities. It's one of the only ones in the nation. It's on a very short list of IDB research centers. So, you know, being able to have those resources, that can go in your statement of purpose, where you can say, you know, your university has these resources, has these research labs, has this opportunity to participate in these clinical experiences that I can't get anywhere else. And I'd be a good fit because, you know, in my instance, I've worked in a clinical setting. I've worked with populations that have autism. I've worked with populations that have IDD. I have all this research experience from SVSU, you know? So, yeah, I would say the main thing is start your research early and do it often, and really try to find those programs that you could see yourself being a part of and being a good fit in.
Thanks so much. I'm going to quickly, because I know a few people have to leave pretty soon, so I want to quickly hand it over to Erica. And also, if you had any questions on those note cards, I know I gave them out and then I kind of forgot about them. You can hand them over this way as Eric was talking.
Okay. Hi, my name's Erica. This is my 5th year at SDSU. I'll be graduating in May with my bachelor's for psychology. My minor is currently in health science because when I started, I was a neuroscience major, which developed into health science, which developed into psychology. So I feel like really quickly, some of the most important things I want to touch on for you guys is like tips that I found to help keep myself organized in the process, because if you don't have ways to keep yourself organized, very, very quickly, you're going to feel overwhelmed and just like you don't even know where to start. So something that's helped me, I feel like the most is one, creating an entirely new email address for anything grad school. When I contact program directors, when I apply or sign up to do info sessions, anything like that, I have a specific email address for it, because if you just use your regular email address that you're on all these email lists for stores and all this stuff, things can get lost very, very quickly. And you don't want to lose any of that information. It's very, very important to keep all of that. Another thing that I do is I have a spreadsheet made where I have my schools that I'm applying to in columns, and then in the rows I have things that I find important. So the deadline. I have tuition, price per credit, I have application fees, I have the emails for the contacts of people that I've been talking to. And this is really helpful for me because a lot of schools I've found personally is they have websites that can be very, very difficult to navigate. So you can go to a website and it's here's your page, and I'm going for school psychology. Here's your school psychology page, and it'll give you maybe a paragraph or two. And then you're going to have to go through link after link after link if you're just looking for something as simple as, like I said, tuition credit. Even to find the application sometimes can be a process because they don't have it on the same page. So I have in that spreadsheet any link I could need, any additional information. It's really, really helpful to keep yourself organized like that, because you don't want to have to go through link after link, Google search after Google search just to find one specific thing that you're I saw this 3 weeks ago, I can't remember where I found it. Something else that I've been doing lately is, this semester I'm involved with Dr. Dutta. I'm TAing a class for her. If anyone is interested in doing anything related to educational psych, school psych, even if you want to be a professor, anything where you want to work in a school setting, I found TAing to be a very, very, very beneficial experience. It gives you that experience working with students. It gives you that experience kind of the behind the curtain of how things work around here. It is very time consuming. It definitely is very time consuming. There's a lot of things, especially with Dr. Gatto, who she updates her courses every semester to keep things fresh. She listens to what you guys say for your feedback. She really does listen. And when you are updating courses like that, you got to go through your lectures, all of this stuff. It's very time consuming, but if you have the time to do it, I really, really recommend getting in with a professor and asking to do that. Let's see, what else was I supposed to say? Oh, yes. I touched on this a little bit, but contacting those program directors is also very important. I kind of went through during the summer and I sent emails to a few program directors, and you can meet one-on-one with them and you can just ask any questions you have. And it's really important that you have questions to ask to show your interest. You want these people to know that you're interested, because these are going to be the people who are reviewing your application. And if they recognize your name and they say, oh, this person came to me with all these questions, they seem really interested, they did their research on our program, they're going to already have that positive impression of you. So that is nothing but beneficial to you, is to contact those people. Another thing with writing your CVs, your statement of purpose, all of that stuff, I'm a tutor in the Writing Center, and on our Writing Center website, we actually have files to help you kind of organize that. We have podcast episodes that we've been doing this semester to talk about things like that. So looking at SUC resources, there's a lot to help you. It's just a matter of searching for it. That's probably all I have to say, just to keep it pretty short.
No, that's great. Before we move on to last few things. Any questions for either Erica or Travis? Is there where you might be in like either a few months or a year or two?
Maybe I can ask a question to the two of you. As you're looking at programs, do you get any feedback from websites or the folks you're talking with about acceptance rates or typical class sizes?
Yeah. I had a meeting with the MSU program director for School Psych, and I asked her that question, and she said, obviously I don't know if this is how it works for every school, but she said for their specialist degree, which is what I want, they do their specialist cohorts based upon how many PhD candidates they're taking. So if they're taking, 20 PhD candidates, they're gonna take maybe like 10 specialists. And it does sound a bit disheartening almost when you hear like you have 70 applicants, 10 made it through. But that's just how it is, and you can't let that get you down, because if you do that, you have to think like, okay, these 70 people might be applying to the same school as you are. So if they're 10 get in here, 10 get in here, it really is just kind of like a ratio of it. You don't want to go in thinking like, oh, I might be one of these 60 that don't get in or anything like that, because at the end of the day, it's going to be kind of all the same people applying to the same programs. And another thing, don't be afraid to go out of state. If you want to stay in Michigan, it's not really, you can't decide if you want to stay in Michigan. Like for School Psych, there's 4 schools I'm applying to in Michigan and 5 out of state. And that if you don't want to go out of state, it will be a bit harder for you to find a school. It really will, because you're just limiting your choices. And when you apply, you want to apply to multiple schools to give yourself that better chance to get in.
Yeah, no, I found the same thing too with clinical programs. I'm pretty sure if a clinical program is accredited by the APA, they're required to report their admission statistics and stuff like that. So the clinical web pages will actually have like a link to like an Excel spreadsheet or a chart that shows like we get this many applications, this many accepted, here's the percentage accepted. Clinical percentage rates are insanely low, and I'm sure like Dr. Patrick can speak to that. Don't let that dishearten you either, because if you really sell yourself to that program, they're gonna really want you. Applying to more programs, of course, is more work, but it also gives you a better chance of getting it. So yeah, if you're applying to clinical or anything that's APA accredited, they actually have all that information usually right on their main webpage that says this many get in, this many don't get in, this many get funded, this many go on to actually pass the what's it called, the EPPP. Yep, so the licensing exam. One thing that I just thought about that I wanted to add though is if you're going for any type of degree that requires licensure, like state licensure, and you decide to go out of state, you really need to keep tabs on those programs. What I found is that Ohio's requirements for Ohio state licensure varies a little bit than the Michigan state licensure. So Ohio State actually requires like more things than Michigan does. So I'll be fine if I want to come back to Michigan to practice psychology. But that's another thing you really want to look for is, it all goes into the research beforehand. Is will I be able to get licensed at this program? Because if you're short 100 internship hours in a clinical program, and you come back to Michigan, the state of Michigan's going to say, well, you don't have enough internship hours, so you can't apply to take the EPPP.
And the outcome data. Usually, if you have an accredited program, they'll show you even like the amount of their students that get jobs after graduation.
Yep.
So just a few things. We do have 2 other people who wanted to speak. If Dr. Patrick and Dr. Dutta could especially think about the resources that are out there, that would be great. And I don't want to cut them off. Please don't think that. But before I forget, because I know myself, I will forget. We have this evaluation of our workshop today. I'm going to hand those out. If you don't mind folding them up, maybe just putting them on that file cabinet that's right at the door. Before you, don't leave yet if you don't have to. But if you could do that as you go. Okay, so go ahead. The other thing, because I know I will forget as people go, I will send out a list of resources to anybody who RSVP'd or was on Teams. But I'll also put that list of resources on our Psych Major and Minor Canvas site. So So you have links and so forth, so everybody should be able to access them. Okay, I don't want to take any more of your time, so whoever wants to say a few words.
I can actually, a lot of mine are links, so I can send them. I just wanted to make a very quick pitch besides clinical programs, because I know a lot of students want to be in the helping professions. There's a whole area, just like social work, called Human Development and Family Studies. And they are somewhat psych, somewhat social work, and actually much more progressive in terms of research, in terms of non-experimental research in particular, which happens a lot with individuals. So I will post some information about that, schools that are here within Michigan and outside, and the kinds of positions, like particularly marital therapy or couples therapy or couples counseling types of things. Those are different accreditation bodies as well that you should become familiar with. One quick comment before I forget, when Erica and Travis were talking, that spreadsheet, oh my gosh, I'm one of the, I think, people who really pushes that students have a spreadsheet with which school, application deadlines, who they're talking to, et cetera, but you need to share that also with those who are writing your letters of recommendation. Because when we write the letters of recommendation, if we write this global statement like, oh, it's a good student with a good GPA, that does nothing, not a thing. So we need to know where you're applying, we need to know what your interest is, we need to know which lab you're looking at as a potential future. And if we can address that, then it has the impact that it's supposed to. Otherwise, we are just as much in the dark as you are if we haven't been communicated.
I mean, I know that I look very young. Excuse me. Thank you. But back in the day, oh man, that's bad. I had a binder, and so if you're somebody who's not like super tech savvy, like I get some of that trepidation from students in 302. But if you're like somebody who likes physical books and things, like a binder is a good idea too. And you like print things out or write them down in a notebook, whatever it takes. Like it doesn't have to be a spreadsheet, but organization is really important, especially in terms of like keeping your letter writers on task, because you're not maybe the only student, and we're forgetful professors, absent-minded, it comes with the territory. So keeping tabs and reminders, we appreciate that, and also I think helps give us a nice cheery feeling about you that you're on top of your game. So.
And there's one book that's out there that you should really, everybody, it's like a bitty Bible, I call it, How to Be a Savvy Psych Major. So those of you, especially if you're younger, you're not in your senior year and doing all this right now, you should really look at that. What you're doing during your time here is going to be very helpful. How to line up your classes, what kinds of experiences to seek out and why you're seeking them out, how it's building your curriculum, and how it's building the professional skill set that you need to bring, whether it's to research, whether it's to clinical practice, whether it's to whatever you want to shape your career into. So, and that's the binder is what reminded me. It's just a 3-hole punch binder, and it just says how to be a savvy psych major. I can assure you it could possibly be social and health science and whatever else too, but it's also there where all our resources are.
Okay, hi, Dr. Pashik. First, really important thing, not enough people are eating the snacks that Dr. Lynch brought. So could I perhaps have someone grab that box and pass it around?
Absolutely.
I lured all my own students to come to this because I said there would be snacks, and I would feel like a hypocrite if I didn't facilitate that happening.
There you go.
As people have been saying, I'm a clinical psychologist. You all have been sitting and taking in a lot of stressful info for the past hour. I know this is a lot of work. Can I see a show of hands? I'm potentially interested in a mental health career. Okay, this is a good fun to do. I'll be really concise since this is almost over. I, for the past year and a half, have been building a website that has career advising materials. So I'm going to pass this out. It's got a QR code for how you can get to it.
And we can put that link or QR code on our Canvas site too, I think.
Yeah.
At least I think
There's a forefront view. So You'll be back here.
Oh, I sorry.
Oh no.
I wasn't.
Okay. I've run out of time, but they may have extras. I'm gonna grab these. So I feel like that would potentially be a better way to convey some of the things that I can help with. So, oh, the screen's off now. I was gonna pull it up and show it, but it's fine. If you have questions like, what is the difference between social work and clinical psychology? I heard today that social workers do clinical work. Is that true? Wait, what does this look like? What are the licensing options? I've tried to concisely summarize a lot of that. I want to echo what other folks have said. You might have a bit of a stereotyped view of certain careers floating in your head. You might be thinking, yeah, I want to be a forensic psychologist because I want to chase serial killers. I have a page on that, please read it. You might be thinking, well, social workers just help abused children and they break up divorced families, right? That's it? No! Social workers do a lot of amazing things, a really wide variety of stuff that overlaps pretty greatly with my field. You might be thinking, wait, what is a counselor? And how is that different from a counseling psychologist? And how is that different from a clinical psychologist? Those are all really great questions that take more than 5 minutes to explore, but I've tried to give some of that info. So check out my website and help me feel like it wasn't a waste of time to fill all of it. Are there questions you have? Lorena?
I don't necessarily need an answer. I was just kind of interested on international admissions processes for other countries and how that works. And I didn't know if I could. I know Dr. Gutter, you might have some information on that, but I didn't know if I could email anybody else if they would have any information.
That's a lovely question. I'm not sure. I know that Canada's clinical psych programs are sort of, they function mostly under the same kind of bubble of policies and practices as US programs do. Beyond that, you look at like Australia or the UK and their entire structure of licensing is different from ours. So I have a friend in Australia, there's like no such thing as getting a doctorate in clinical psych with the intent to practice. It's just you get your master's if you want to practice, you get your doctorate if you want to be a researcher, and it's much more separate than it is here. So I don't know that I could give good answers like in general. It would probably just take a lot of exploring. But yeah, go ahead. Please.
Yeah, I'm actually going to concur with that. Is depending on what area of psychology you're going into. I think because of the pandemic, I ended up putting out a Twitter account and then got into academic psych sorts of things. I do know that there are many opportunities for master's and graduate work in both in Canada and in Europe that are offering more funding as compared to even the United States in some places. And if you're interested in something like that, very important to do your homework. Because especially if you haven't traveled in those countries, I would be very leery. But if supposing, like I'm just gonna make this up as a quick example, when I was coming out, I had a professor coming from Max Planck Institute in Germany who was a good friend of my advisors and so on. And there was a real possibility for me to just go and work with them, and I would have been probably one of the top people within the field of lifespan development. But I had to waver because I was already on an international student visa and then taking a postdoc in another country and coming back. The IRS and INS both would have freaked out about it, and my life would have been in the doldrums, so I chose not to do that. But you got to understand your own life circumstances, and then you can actually avail of these opportunities. And I think that living in some of these countries is sometimes cheaper as a student, and you're able to do things that you might not otherwise do. So I very strongly encourage people to. I came here as an international student for graduate school. Many of you worry too much about all these details. When I came, for example, there was no internet, there were no cell phones. The life was just different. There was nothing online about all these accrediting agencies and all these kinds of things that you're hearing about. But you take some risks and you want to have an adventure and you know what you want to study. I knew exactly what I wanted to do and which professors I wanted to work with. And as one of them moved from Cornell to Penn State, I changed my application because that's all the money I had was either the GRE score goes here or goes there. And so you have to do those things to make it happen, but it's very, very doable.
I think there was just at least one more question. I forgot
Yeah,
what the
okay.
name was.
I was wondering about abnormal psychology, because I'm differing between specializing between childhood development and abnormal psychology because I do want to help those with the mental health illnesses and different ways of helping possibly better life. Do you know like a good, like if you were to specialize in abnormal psychology, like what would your job options be?
Lots of options. I think probably one of the bigger things to be deciding earlier is, do I want to keep clinical work in the potential future of my career, or do I want to specifically do academics, research, writing, teaching, that sort of stuff? Because that would be the big difference between, say, a developmental psychology PhD, which is you're an academic, you're a scholar, and programs that are called child clinical psych or child counseling psych, which would have a lot of the academic components, but also give you applied skills and license eligibility. So that would probably be the earliest fork in the road to be thinking about, and then many, many forks after that. And I can chat with you in more detail at some point if you'd like.
And I think that's something we all concur on, is we can't answer all personalized questions in a forum, but our doors are always open, and our team's doors are also open. Okay, so if you're a person who has to meet virtually or whatever, the one thing about this department that I think makes it stand out, and I've been here, I tell people I'm a dinosaur, right? I've been here over 25 years now almost. It's really important to understand that we're here to advise you, whether you're first generation, whether you're, whether you have people who are there to assist you or not. We will definitely be doing the best that we can to guide you the best, and when we can't, we'll tell you, I don't know some things, some things change. So use the opportunities you have both here on our campus, the career services, the tutoring centers, the writing center. They're all here to assist you, but none of this happens in a classroom. You see, that is the matrix of college that you have to develop. And that's why it's really important not to just think like only coming to class and getting a good grade will somehow, the degree is going to help out in a lot of ways. Yes, of course it will help, but all this navigation stuff has to happen outside of classrooms, and we're here to help.
I think that's a wonderful way to end. I wonder if we are, need to get out for a class.
Yeah,
You have a class yet?
No,
Oh,
all right. I know I'm in the wrong place.
okay.
Not because I saw you.
I said I'm in the wrong place for you.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, there was a professor like kind of lurking outside, I wasn't sure. But that's a really nice way to end because us in the department, some of your fellow students, even in social work and other places, are your best resource here. You probably have a lot of questions as you start to apply, and we're here to help. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for our speakers, especially. Let's give our speakers a hand.
Yes.
Really appreciate it.
I
And
don't know
again,
if
if
they
you
want
could leave
to say
those
that.
evaluations there, that would be great. Sorry, go ahead.
Did anybody online have any last words of wisdom? Can they hear me at all? Do any of you online have any last words of wisdom?
Thank you so much. People
Thanks a
online.
lot for coming. Thanks, Jordan. Thanks, Daniel. Very, very nice to see you. Thanks, Deborah. Sorry. Thank you all for joining us online. Jordan, hope to see you sometime soon.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Are you talking about your data? I was curious, is